Hello guys, welcome to the impact of training on lifestyle diseases. This is the last topic on the AS physiology section. So what we need to have a look at then, we need to have an understanding of the effect of training on lifestyle diseases. Okay, so specifically we have to look at how, first of all we need to know some lifestyle diseases. So we have to know lifestyle diseases specifically linked to coronary heart disease, stroke, atherosclerosis, heart attack. And then we need to know how, if you do exercise in a certain way, for example, submaximal exercise, 60 to 80% of your max heart rate, 30 minutes, 3 times a week, what are the adaptations that happen that specifically combat these kind of cardiovascular diseases and also these two respiratory lifestyle disease or conditions. So they're the things we have to know about. So if I could just take some quick notes on these. So starting off then, if I just show you all of this stuff when you're talking about coronary heart disease, atherosclerosis and heart attack, it's all to do with the coronary artery, and what happens is the coronary artery is damaged. So if I showed you a healthy coronary artery, you've got one here. Okay, so this is a normal one. Now, what happens if poor diet, high cholesterol diet, if you have smoke, for example, or if you are inactive physically, what happens is there's a slight tear or a hardening takes place of the artery wall. Now, you don't need to know this in this spec, but this is called, when it hardens, it's called arteriosclerosis. Now, what happens after the hardening is there's a tear occurs, and what happens is there is kind of an accumulation of fat and cholesterol, or fatty deposits and cholesterol, around the coronary artery wall. Okay, so that then means that obviously there's less space for the blood to go through, and it can lead to clots. Now, you don't need to have written anything at this point, but I think it's important to see that's a normal artery. That's when it starts to get damaged. That is when the damage starts to get even worse, and this is the worst case scenario, as a blood clot, which could lead to a heart attack. So that helps us when we go on to this. So atherosclerosis then, what is it? Okay, so atherosclerosis is, I think A, it's the accumulation of fatty deposits and cholesterol, okay, around the coronary artery wall. Okay, so if you get that first bit, okay, this means there is a narrowing of the coronary artery, or particularly here, the lumen. Okay, the lumen is the kind of circumference of an artery. So in this case, it's this bit here. So what happens? You see the lumen there, the circumference of the coronary artery is quite big. And then what happens during this is it gets a lot smaller to about there and there. Okay, so back down to here. So your description is simply this: accumulation of fatty deposits around the coronary artery wall. This leads to a narrowing of the lumen, which reduces blood flow to the heart. So that will do. I mean, you can put that on there if you want. Increases risks of blood clot to the heart. So next bit is we have a look at coronary heart disease. So if you have coronary heart disease here, then, so coronary heart disease specifically is results from atherosclerosis of the coronary artery, which we just discussed there. So all we have to know is if atherosclerosis is the accumulation of fatty deposits around the coronary artery wall, coronary heart disease as a kind of umbrella term results from atherosclerosis, so which you could say, if you put a little dash here, the narrowing of the coronary artery. Okay, so atherosclerosis of the coronary artery, e.g. narrowing. Then this as the same as before, reduces the oxygenated blood flow to the heart muscle, which can then lead to angina or a heart attack. Okay, it can also lead to high blood pressure. Then we've done these two then, so we've kind of looked at the cause, which is atherosclerosis, and the effect, which is kind of coronary heart disease. And then, of course, the final one is heart attack. And the big difference here to anything else is that a heart attack then is, you've gone back to here, coronary heart disease. This is an overview. So what is a heart attack? Well, basically, when you have atherosclerosis, if you have a heart attack, there is a severe or total blockage of the coronary artery. So no oxygen can get to the myocardium or the heart wall muscle. Okay, and it's usually due to a blood clot from atherosclerosis, as you saw there. These bits you can add if you want to. So they're your first three terms. So going down to here then. Stroke. Okay, so a stroke, as ischemia, it can also be called. This is when there's a blockage in the cerebral artery, and it completely cuts off blood supply to the brain. Okay, so just make sure you've got those key things there. They are your 4 kind of cardiovascular lifestyle diseases. Okay, so you need a little description of them and a little bit of an effect on. You need a couple of points really for each one. Now, what happens if you start to exercise? If you can make a little heading now of exercise, is going to allow adaptations or prevention of those cardiovascular lifestyle diseases. It would need to be your FIT principle. So you're looking at 3 times a week minimum. You're looking at frequency 3 times a week. Intensity 60 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. Then you're looking at time. It should be 20 minutes at least, maybe preferably 30 minutes plus. And then the type of activities would be like low impact stuff like jogging, cycling, etc. Now, if you do that over a period of 6 to 8 weeks and continue to do it, this can have a really real positive effect on those lifestyle diseases. So what happens? What happens then is there is a decrease by exercising. There's a decreased number of low density lipoproteins. Okay, and this is due. Low density lipoproteins are the kind of free radicals. They're like the kind of fatty deposits. Those things we talked about earlier. The fatty deposits in the cholesterol during atherosclerosis. And what happens? As the flip side to that, when you exercise, there's an increase in high-density lipoproteins. And what they do is they act as scavengers and chip away at the low-density lipoproteins, which are the plaque or the fat accumulating around those artery walls. Okay, and this is huge because how does it link to CHD and which one? It prevents atherosclerosis. Okay, now the next adaptation that takes place is we have cardiac hypertrophy. Okay, done this before. So cardiac hypertrophy. Now, due to the fact the heart gets bigger, there's an increased pumping capacity. Okay, we've talked about this stuff before, increased stroke volume, cardiac output. Now, this basically means that in order for the stroke volume and cardiac output to increase, the artery walls have to vasodilate and vasoconstrict. And this is good because it helps prevent arteriosclerosis, the hardening of the wall, atherosclerosis, and it also lowers the resting heart rate. So going on from there then, we also have this one here. So you have a decreased blood viscosity. Okay, so this means that due to exercise, the resistance to flow is reduced. So there is thinner blood, which allows more efficient transport of oxygenated blood to the working muscles. And of course, this helps if you've got thinner blood that's flowing, it helps prevent blood clots. Okay, then I mean, with this one, I'd probably leave that. Let's just go for this last one here then. So you've got, leave that one, don't put it in. So also there is an a reduced resting blood pressure. Okay, so, we don't really study blood pressure in the new specification, but blood pressure, again, is a kind of resistance of your arteries to let blood flow through them. So what happens then, if you can reduce that resting blood pressure, this is really important for CHD or coronary heart disease because it helps prevent blood clots. That is a really, really important thing there because if your blood can flow through the arteries, that means that there's less chance of the blood congealing and clotting at the bottom bit there. So what I'll ask you to do then, I think that's enough. If I could just ask you so far, if we go back to the kind of specification section here, you need to know the effect of training on lifestyle diseases. Tomorrow's lesson will be based on recapping coronary heart disease, stroke, atherosclerosis, and a heart attack. Okay, what are they? Can you describe them? And then once you've described them, can you actually say how exercise, particularly exercise, specific type of exercise, can help prevent these? Okay, thank you.